What is up, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to WP Workshop. Today I want to show you how you can fetch images from Unsplash directly in n8n. This is actually surprisingly simple to do, and more importantly, it can be a very useful automation. I mean, there are multiple cases where you would want to get a quality image to go alongside whatever you are automating through n8n, and Unsplash is a great source of those images. Even more so, it actually allows you to fetch images through an easy-to-use API. So let me just walk you through the workflow that I've created in here. It's pretty simple. However, the first thing that you need is gonna be a developer account with Unsplash. And this is pretty straightforward, actually. All you do is just go to unsplash.com/developers and sign up for an account. You can use your normal Unsplash login for that. Then once you do have your account, just go into your apps, and in here you get to create a new application. This is pretty simple. You have to agree to the terms of use, of course. Just read through everything, select the boxes, accept terms, and once you do, you're gonna see your project here on the list. So if you click into it, somewhere on the page you're gonna find your application ID, your access key, and your secret key. So just copy those somewhere to the side, because we're gonna use those in n8n. So in here in the workflow, all that I'm doing is I'm setting Unsplash, meaning I do provide my API key, that is all that's needed, and then I'm also fetching the keywords from the previous node, which happens to be chat input. So what I'm gonna do is pretty simple. I'm providing the keywords based on which Unsplash is gonna give me an image that matches those keywords. Unsplash has a number of features available through the API. One of them is the endpoint that lets you fetch a random image that matches keywords. And this is my favorite one. This is the one I'm using the most. You can also search photos, which will give you a single page of photo results based on the query, and so on. There are more options. You can go through the docs, find out everything about it, but for the purpose of what I'm doing here, I'm just gonna grab one random photo that matches my search. So in the next node, this is where I call the Unsplash API. So pretty simple. The method is get, then I just use the endpoint URL of the API, which is photos random, authentication to none, but I do want to send query parameters. In here, the keywords that come from the previous node. I also like to use the content filter parameter and set it to high. This basically will make sure that you don't get any not safe for work types of images, even though Unsplash doesn't really have those, but this basically makes sure that any image you get will fit basically whatever scenario. So I do that, and then I also send the headers, and in the headers all I do is just send the authorization header with my client ID, which is the API key, and then I want to accept application JSON as the result. One more thing, so I actually also have this setting that will allow this node to continue on error. So this is not the default setting, but I do encourage you to set this to continue, because so maybe your keywords are too strict and Unsplash cannot match a good image. So in that case, Unsplash won't give you an image, but that would also cause an error. And if you have an error in your larger n8n workflow, then the whole workflow can actually be halted. So you don't want that in most cases. So you will want to handle this problem, this error, in the next node maybe. So that is why I prefer to have it execute even if there are no images. And then lastly, all I do is just grab the image URL, and in this case I also grab the alt description. And alternatively, I also created another node here that is a code node, and this one does something a bit more fancy. It actually checks for the error in case, you know, Unsplash didn't return any images. And if there are no problems, this node is gonna create the output to be a valid markdown definition of an image. So let me show you how it works, right? So I have the chat in here, wine party. Let's send it. It's executing, and let me show you what has happened. So let's just click on this one. So you will see that Unsplash is returning tons of detail, you know, in the API response. So there's lots of info about the photo that I've received through that. You know, there's when the photo was created, the dimensions. I even have various versions of the image address. For me, I like to use the regular one because this is not too big, not too small. It's actually a great size of an image to use on the web. So usually the full size is just huge, so not great. And then I also like to fetch the alt description, which works, you know, pretty well for the alt tag for an image. Alternatively, you can grab, you know, that information in a different language. So there's really lots of options here. So yeah, as you can see, this code node has generated a correct markdown markup for the image. Let's just see the image, what it is. So yeah, okay, maybe not best, right? This isn't a wine, but it's just a demo, right? So this other node, it just returned the image URL and the alt tag. And the best part about it, I mean, you've noticed that I just returned the address of the image. And actually, Unsplash in its guidelines section in the docs tells us that hot linking is actually the preferred way, the only acceptable way of using their images. So if you want to use an image from Unsplash by fetching it through the API, you actually have to hotlink it. So you don't actually download the image because Unsplash wants you to embed it directly. So you can do lots of things with an automation like that. Yeah, so that is basically it. I hope you're gonna check out this automation and use it in a creative way. Do feel free to let me know what you need Unsplash images for. You will of course find more info about this workflow in the video description. And for now, don't forget to like, subscribe. I'm Karol. You can find me at wpwork.shop. And see you next time.